Hey, Pat McCardle back for another episode of Shop Talk, where today we're down in Southern California with the Polaris Factory Racing Team to check out what they've got going on. Stay tuned. Hey, we just made it inside the lobby, and the first guy we got to come find is Ryan. Ryan, how's it going today, man?
Good, Pat. How you doing?
Wonderful. Hey, can you tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what your role is here and what you guys do at the shop?
Well, my name is Ryan Thomas. I'm the general manager of the Polaris Factory Race Team. And this is the home of the race team where we tear down and prep and get ready to go racing with the Factory Pro Rs.
Nice. So I can see you got some good hardware in the showcase closet behind us here. What do you guys got going here?
Well, I got to tell you, about a year and a half ago, this shelf was empty. It said coming soon. We're running out of space. We've entered 8 races so far since the inception of the race team, and we've won every single one of them.
Well, that's not a bad track record at all. Now, you're not the only one that's here at the race shop, right? This is done by a group of people, not just you. How many people in total kind of make up the factory program out here?
Within these walls, we're about 10, and that's full-time here. We've got guys that are cleaning parts, guys that are planning logistics, guys that are maintaining the razors. And but then once we get to the race course, our team will swell to upwards of 75 or 80, including 7 to 10 full-time people back in Minnesota that are on the Polaris side.
Nice. All right, that's enough for the lobby. Let's go out in the shop and see where the real action is.
Let's hit it.
This is awesome. All right, so Johnny, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do here at the shop.
I'm Johnny Nelson, crew chief of the team, pretty much in charge of anything overseeing these race racers and making sure that they get to the start line ready to win the race.
All right, now the machine we're standing right next to now, I mean, this thing looks clean enough I could eat lunch off of it, but being that these recently came back from a race, there's no way this is what it looked like when it got here, right?
No, if you were here a couple days ago, you would have seen that. This one represents a situation after we've already done all the inspections and wash procedure.
Nice. Let's wander down to the other bay so you can kind of tell me the status of each one of these rigs as we go. So I see you got body work on this side, but on the other side, it's looking wide open. So can we maybe get that camera in and kind of showcase a little bit of the interior here?
Yeah, we didn't need to do any fitment checks over here, so body work is off. It gives you a good view of the user interface of what the drivers and co-drivers have to deal with. Here is an impact gun, quick mount. So it comes out, everything's designed to be as user-friendly as possible, so there's no issue on race day.
Yeah, and it looks like, you know, a little bit different steering wheel, but you still got some buttons on here, but not the normal buttons that you'd see on a regular Razor, right?
That's correct. We actually moved the ride command buttons that allow you to adjust the shocks up to the steering wheel, and we also have a drinker and a radio button on that steering wheel as well.
Nice. So some race-specific items, you know, when you look, you got a lot of stuff going on in that center stack. But let's keep going down and kind of check out. We got some with the bodywork off. Maybe you can get into a little more. What are some of the things that you guys are looking for as you're doing that teardown?
Yeah, this Razor is in a little bit deeper disassembly. This one has been washed, and we are in the process of removing the front suspension arms and removing the rear suspension arms and really just digging into this vehicle to change out any component that has wear on it.
Now, how much of this gets torn down after each race? I mean, is it all the way down to the frame, or is it like, you know, hey, the engine stays in it, but the suspension comes off?
For the most part, the wiring and plumbing will always remain in the vehicle. We'll remove that if we need to work on those items specifically. We remove drivetrain, we remove any wearable component. All of those components are changed on a life cycle. That life cycle is right about 1,500 miles for us. So whether a front differential has 1,500 miles on it, you know, or not, yep, that tells us whether we need to change the part.
Now, speaking of the front differential, you know, looking down kind of near it, I can see you got a heat strip on the inboard joint there. What do you guys have going on with that?
We are measuring temperature during the race, so we can see how high the peak temperature is of that CV joint and understand if we're over-temping it or if we're just right.
Nice. Now, I'm obviously only seeing one. How many different spots are you putting, you know, those types of measuring devices on these rigs?
I think there's probably about 15 or 20 of those temperature indicators across the whole vehicle.
And as you guys are thinking, you know, like data collection and what you're pulling off of these, I got to imagine that's not the only piece of data that's coming back after a race, right?
Correct. Each vehicle is able to capture quite a bit of data through the MOTEC system of a vehicle, which is a valuable tool that we have.
All right, so Johnny, I see you got some beautiful shocks sitting on the workbench behind you. What's going on here?
These are shocks that just completed the last event.
Now, are you guys like tearing these down and rebuilding them? Are you sending them back to Fox? What happens with a set of shocks between races?
Our race team has a great relationship working with Fox, and these race shocks all get serviced by Fox Racing.
All right, well, I think we better go over to see this last machine that's parked on the row here, because clearly I can see the hard links are here, and you got some other things hanging off the wheels. What do you got going here?
Yeah, this vehicle here is in a inspection situation still, and we actually perform a four-wheel alignment after the race. And that lets us know if any alignment specs have kind of been knocked out of whack during the last event.
Nice. And as you're thinking about that, is that maybe part of the, part of the criteria you're using when you're trying to figure out, hey, can we reuse these, control arms, or do we need to swap them out? Or is it purely mileage based kind of for every component on the machine?
It usually is pretty mileage based. We have great components that go the distance, and we typically don't see any premature failures, but we're always looking for those things, and that's why we spend the time to go through and realign everything. If a suspension component got slightly bent under an overload scenario, that would be something we would catch with doing a four-wheel alignment after the race.
Nice. Now, as we come back to the rear of this rig, when I kind of look in this zone, like this engine looks exactly the same as a normal Razor to me.
Well, that's because it is the exact same engine that is in a factory Pro R.
Got it. Well, I think we got some more time in another episode that we can go through that in detail, kind of what's the same and what's different. But I appreciate you walking us through all the work bays here. Who else do we need to meet at the shop to maybe kind of check out? You talked about, lifetime of parts and, kind of how you guys do that, but there's got to be somebody that knows a little bit more about that than you do, right?
Yeah, so our in-house expert for parts is going to be Adam Arsenal. I think we could walk you over and find him in the shop.
All right, perfect. Let's go find Adam. Hey, Adam, I'm Pat. It's good to meet you, man. Why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do here at the shop?
Well, Pat, good to meet you as well. Thanks for coming to visit us today. My name is Adam Arsenal. I'm the operations director here for Polaris Factory Racing. I'm a counterpart to the crew chief, Johnny Nelson. Johnny's responsible for everything on the race vehicles, where I'm responsible for everything outside of them, to include our parts inventory, race strategy, and logistics at the races.
All right, now when I walked up here, I couldn't help but notice these tool cases you've got, and I'm really hoping that you wouldn't mind if I just borrowed these indefinitely and took them home with me.
Unfortunately, I can't let you take them home because we need those to work on the factory Pro Rs.
All right, that's fair enough. All right, as we keep going over here though, I do recognize a lot of these lubricants. I mean, this is exactly the same stuff that we run in standard Razors every day, right?
Exactly. We use a ton of factory stock parts on the factory Pro Rs, and there's no reason that we shouldn't use quality Polaris fluid in those parts as well.
Nice. Now, the other thing that everyone on screen can't see right now is this storage room behind you. And I think you're gonna have to take us through there because it looks absolutely beautiful and the organization is top notch. So let's head over.
It's pretty impressive, Pat. Follow me. As you can imagine, Pat, with 4 factory Pro Rs on the team, it requires a ton of parts to keep them maintained in between and at the races. Luckily, we have this facility and we have a bunch of those parts in stock. And we use a ton of factory parts on these vehicles, including clutches. We don't do any modifications of clutches. We receive them directly from Polaris, and we put them directly on the factory Pro Rs.
Yeah, now one thing I notice here is clearly this is a Polaris part number that you've got on the box, but you guys are doing something a little different with these labels where, you got a picture and you've got this barcode on here too, right?
This is our own internal inventory system where we keep track of all the parts that get used on the vehicles and make sure that we have enough in stock so that we can prep them in between the races.
Nice. All right, well, let's keep going down the aisle here. What other goodies you guys got hiding back here?
We have pretty much everything, Pat, that you would need to prep and maintain a Polaris Pro R. And as I've mentioned before, a lot of these are stock. Stock thermostat that you're going to find in your factory Pro R, stock spark plugs here. Pretty much anything that you can imagine you might need to get it ready for the next race.
Yeah, I mean, I see 7-digit Polaris part numbers all over the place here. These little bins, those boxes, I mean, this is like, a dream come true for a guy like me. All right, Adam, I can't help but notice that you guys have some parts here that look used and they got some tags on them. So what's going on with these?
Exactly, Pat. After every race, when the vehicles are disassembled, We maintain all of the used parts in the event that Polaris would like to analyze them or dissect them, any sort of abnormal wear, or improve them for production vehicles.
Nice. Now, when you think about parts coming off and coming kind of back into your inventory, which parts go back to Polaris and which ones, are you doing samples of to maybe send back to an oil vendor, or the shocks going back to Fox? Like, how many different partners do you guys have that parts are going back to off the race program?
We've got a bunch of different partners. Fox is definitely a big one. All the shocks will come off the vehicles and get sent back to their facility here in Southern California. Fluids as well. All of our fluid samples from the drivetrain components will be sent back to LubeTech so that they can analyze any sort of abnormal wear that may be internal to the component and improve their fluid formulas as well.
Nice. Now, do you guys use that data to help determine whether you got to say, like, swap out an engine or a transmission? And, if the oil test comes back good, it's top it off and keep running for the next race as long as you haven't timed out yet?
Absolutely. All of those tests will come back with detailed information about any sort of abnormal bearing wear, any sort of water that might be in the fluids, and then also for their own internal analysis to make those fluids stronger and better for racing and personal use as well.
All right, now the other thing I think we're gonna have to get out of the storage room here so you can showcase is the chase trucks. So let's head downstairs and check those out.
All right, let's do it.
All right, so Adam, we're standing out here next to the chase truck, but this isn't the only thing that goes into planning for an event down in Baja, right? Can you kind of walk us through some of the prep work that you guys have to think about to be able to set up, remote locations in the middle of the desert down there?
Exactly. It's unlike any other form of racing, Pat. There are pit stops, as you would see in road racing, but those pit stops could be in the middle of nowhere. There's no facilities around, there's no buildings, and everything you may need to fix that razor in the middle of the race, you have to bring down there with you. And that all comes down to these workhorses right here.
Yeah, so how do you know where you actually need to set those up? Because different teams probably strategically kind of go to different locations, right?
Definitely. When we're racing, especially down in Mexico, we have a lot of flexibility on where we set up our pit stops based on fuel mileage, accessibility, all those things go into play. And what we'll do is we'll go down and scout ahead of time pit locations to find spots that support the Razor's fuel mileage and we can get chase trucks into. And from there, our pit crews will go in on race day and set up a fuel pit to support the race Razors.
So, I mean, this lays out, I mean, this is your Bible. We probably shouldn't show everybody everything in here, should we?
That's pretty much the playbook.
All right, so the other thing I noticed now that you got the door open is you've got some unique comms gear in this truck, right, that doesn't come standard. Can you walk us through, there's multiples, so what do they all do?
Most people may think this looks like a police cruiser, but we use all these communications to communicate internally with the team, with all the various support trucks and pit crews, and then also the race vehicles themselves. We have two different types of VHF, both a 50-watt and 100-watt radio, and then we also have two different types of satellite communication. We have an MSAT mobile SATCOM system that's more of an older technology, and then we also have some new technology thanks to Starlink, which gives you mobile internet on the move. All of the race vehicles also have Starlink now. So in the middle of a race, you're not only communicating with the race vehicle, but you can also be sitting there watching Netflix.
So what you're telling me is, like 10 years ago, when you guys were, people were out racing in the desert, you kind of knew about how long it should take somebody to get to the next checkpoint or the next pit stop, right? But if they didn't make it on time, you kind of sat there twiddling your thumbs wondering where the heck they were, right?
Exactly. We have live tracking on all the race vehicles now, so for the most part, unless a system like that fails, we pretty much know where they are at all times.
Nice. All right, now let's get back to kind of my favorite part of the chase truck here. What do you guys have going on inside all these different compartments?
This truck is basically a miniature version of our race facility. So not only do we have tools in here, all of our Boxo tools, anything we may need to repair the race vehicle on course, but we also have a selection of parts. It's obviously a much smaller inventory than what we saw upstairs in the mezzanine, but pretty much any part on the race vehicle from differential to belts is on this truck.
Nice. So, I mean, just about anything you're not carrying on the Razor with you is going to be located in one of the chase trucks to be able to get that machine back up and running in the desert.
Exactly, and we have these spread out on course, so every 25 to 50 miles we'll have a selection of parts. Some trucks may have fewer than others, but ultimately any part that we may need, we bring with us to the race.
And now throughout that race, as you think about the operation side of this chase truck, it's not like they start at the starting line and kind of run alongside. You're almost playing leapfrog, right, with the other chase trucks on who's going to be at which location?
Exactly. Normally with a one vehicle program, you can have one or two trucks that will leapfrog to constantly stay in position with those vehicles. With a multi-vehicle program like the Factory Polaris program, we have to have them stationary so that every single race vehicle can always count on having support at predetermined locations.
So a ton of work goes into the preparation. Obviously, we saw a couple pages of the Bible. We see all the parts and tools in the truck, all the comms gear. Just want to say thanks for taking us through everything.
Great. Thanks for coming, Pat.
All right, so Ryan, we got the chance to not only meet you, but a few of the key players that help make this shop run, right? Is there anything else you want to tell everybody about the Polaris Factory team and, you know, other things that you guys have going on here?
Well, you hit on one thing. You got to meet a few of the key players. It takes a massive amount of people to make this work the way that it works and to be as successful as we are. Everything that's done here is done with the mindset that we have to be prepared for the unexpected, which that's the one thing we do is expect is the unexpected. And from a part standpoint, you know, there's a lot of parts upstairs that you guys saw. The organization of that and the number of parts that are there, it's so that we can be efficient when it's time to tear down one of these vehicles and get it ready for the next race. Sometimes we've only got a matter of 10 days to 14 days. So we're aware of the fact that it's not an unlimited budget, and we track the life cycle of the parts. We push the parts to their limit. But at the end of the day, this is what it takes to be successful.
Yeah, well, hey, you guys are running a beautiful shop. It's a great operation. If it's okay, I'm going to be coming back because I think, we want to talk to a few more of the guys, including the racers. But that's it for this episode of Shop Talk. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you want to see next time.